Thank you so much, Mr. Childs and Mr. Kelly, for this generous award and your very kind words. And thank you all for that warm welcome. I really don't have the words to fully express how much this all means to me. I am delighted to be here with you today, and most especially with the graduating class of 2019, during this wonderful celebration in this magnificent theater. Wow, from up here, it's really quite a sight to behold. As a former ODOT teacher for 26 years, I'm much more familiar with the experience of sitting directly behind the graduates with my colleagues, sharing our collective sense of satisfaction, end-of-the-year fatigue, and anticipation for the beginning of summer vacation. Wearing our caps and gowns, I often had the feeling that we were graduating too. I also distinctly remember the one occasion when I sat in the family and friends section 6 years ago. My wife Cheryl and I were here to witness the graduation of our twins, our son Sage and our daughter Maya, graduates of the BOD class of 2013. The feelings of joy and pride we experienced that day were off the charts. They're here with us today. And of course, I vividly remember the one time I sat among my fellow graduates during my own high school commencement exercise, 49 years ago this month, in a much more modest setting, the gymnasium at St. Joseph High School in Alameda. That was the last time I had the opportunity to speak at a graduation, my own. So I really appreciate how special it is to stand before you all here today. My parents, who are both gone now, saved me a copy of the speech I gave that day. Knowing I would be speaking here on this occasion, I was curious as to what I had to say during my own graduation, so I recently read it for the first time in decades. What struck me as I reviewed it was the feeling that while my fellow seniors and I were certainly very ready and very excited to graduate, we were more than a bit scared. Our high school years from 1966 through 1970 were quite turbulent, a time of great upheaval, uncertainty, and anxiety. Here are some of the events that shook our country during those years. Hundreds of thousands of American soldiers were fighting an unwinnable war far away in Vietnam, and its unpopularity fueled an intense anti-war movement that roiled our cities and our campuses. Groups that had long been oppressed took to the streets, and protests for civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, and migrant farmer worker rights made it clear that they were angry and organized and weren't going to take it anymore. Gun violence claimed the lives of thousands of our citizens, including two of our most prominent leaders, Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy. Little did we know then that in the ensuing 50 years, more Americans would be killed by domestic gun violence than all those who had died in all U.S. wars combined. And Richard Nixon won an incredibly close presidential election, but became such a divisive, embattled, and unpopular leader that he would soon be forced to resign in the face of almost certain impeachment for obstruction of justice in the wake of the Watergate scandal. In short, during my high school years, it felt like the ideals of America were being severely tested and pushed almost to the breaking point. Does that sound all too familiar? Does it often feel that way to you now? We may have come a long way since then, but clearly we have such a long way yet to go. There was, however, one shining moment, literally above all, that to many of us was the most memorable event of our young lives. The landing of American astronauts on the moon exactly 50 years ago next month. And even more unforgettable, those first images of the whole Earth taken from space. A beautiful, dazzling, colorful, lonely planet floating in all that darkness. As Bill Anders, the Apollo astronaut who took those first photos, later commented, "We came all this way to explore the moon, and the most important thing that we discovered was the Earth." Those images from space mark the dawning of the realization that our precious, rare, lovely living world, our spaceship Earth, was our home, and the only home we would ever have. Its fragility and vulnerability were brought very close to home when early in 1969, an oil drilling platform off the California coast burst its pipes, coating many miles of the Santa Barbara shoreline with a thick ooze of petroleum, killing thousands of birds and hundreds of marine mammals. Later that year, Cleveland's Cuyahoga River, badly polluted with industrial waste, actually caught fire. Perhaps it was no surprise that in 1970, the year I graduated, the first Earth Day celebration was launched. On April 22nd, millions of Americans took to the streets to demonstrate for a healthy, sustainable planet. And by the end of that year, the Environmental Protection Agency was formed, soon to be followed by the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act. You will be proud to know that Bishop O'Dowd High School was at the vanguard of this emerging environmental movement. 50 years ago, legendary science teacher Brad Goodhart created one of the very first environmental studies courses in our country. Started the Ecology Club, and his students joined the first Earth Day by participating in a shoreline cleanup at Point Reyes. I'm speaking here today because there is an unbroken line connecting O'Dowd's early environmental activism to this very moment. One that runs through the AP Environmental Science and Earth Science classes, the founding of our Living Lab, our Ecology Project international trips, the ongoing campus sustainability programs, the new spiritual ecology class, and most recently, the first Our Common Home Summit hosted by O'Dowd earlier this spring. And the class of 2019 has the distinction of being the very first group of freshmen to take our full-year Science and the Environment class in our newest building on campus, the Center for Environmental Studies. We are quite proud of you and of O'Dowd's kinship with creation. We also know that as you graduate, our current administration in Washington is hell-bent on undoing many of the great strides our country has made in safeguarding the earth, our lives, and our futures. We are confident that you will not stand idly by and let that happen without a fight. We know that you are committed to protecting our precious planet and will strive to create a more just and sustainable world for all its people and its creatures. We trust that in the coming election, you will exercise your newfound power to vote wisely, and that your 2020 vision will not be obscured by the posturing, promises, and propaganda of those who seek to conceal the truth. We know that you know too much to be fooled, and that you will stand for what you know to be right and fair. Just 2 weeks ago, I attended O'Dowd's grand reunion. There I had the pleasure of reconnecting with my former students, some of whom I taught 40 years ago. When I asked them what they remembered most fondly about their days at O'Dowd, they recalled many things. The teachers, the retreats, the sports teams, the theater productions, the clubs, the travel opportunities, Spirit Week, the bands, campus ministry, the debate team, close-ups, student government, the Living Lab, and best of all, the many good friends they made along the way. In essence, what these alumni told me was this: I was seen as a valuable person with much to learn and much to give. I was offered lots of opportunities to grow in mind, body, and spirit, and I was supported wholeheartedly along the way. I hope and trust that you, our current graduates, feel much the same way about your years at O'Dowd. I will leave you with one of my very fondest memories from my teaching days at O'Dowd. It happened not in my classroom, but in that of a colleague who was teaching a class in world religions. She was sick that day, and I was asked to cover her class during my free period. As her substitute, I simply took roll, introduced the guest speaker, a Jewish rabbi, and sat in the back of the room. I'll never forget that rabbi or that class. The rabbi, an elderly gentleman, slowly worked his way to the podium, scanned the room full of students, and began by saying, "I can guess what you may be thinking. My God, this man is old. How can he possibly relate to us? What can he say that we'd find interesting and relevant?" He smiled and continued, "None of you are married yet. Most of you will be one day. Do you wonder how you will know when you have found your life's partner? Do you want to know what to look for in a mate? Do you want to know what makes for a happy marriage? I've wondered that too. In my temples, we have couples who've been married a very long time, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And I wanted to know their secret. How have you stayed together so long?" So I asked them, one couple at a time, during long conversations in my office over the course of nearly a year, to tell me about their long lives together. And do you know what I found out? Can you guess what they told me was most important? At which point, the students offered their best guesses. Intellect? Religion? Children? Politics? Looks? Finances? Hobbies? Travel? In-laws? To which the rabbi patiently responded, "Yes, those were all important, but none of them was the most important thing." Finally, a student in the back of the room raised her hand and somewhat hesitantly said, "Great sex?" To which the rabbi responded with surprising animation, "Ah, now you're getting close." He then wrote on the board a single word in all caps, "passion." Yes, he said, physical intimacy between couples was indeed important, but not the key thing. He elaborated, couples who stayed together said that they helped each other to discover their own sense of greater purpose, their true passion. They gave each other the encouragement to seek their greatest joy while finding ways to serve the needs of the world. And then he turned back to the board and he added the letters C-O-M to the beginning of the word passion. He explained, look at this word, compassion. Passion can mean many things: intense desire, drive, a fervor. But its original meaning, taken from the passion of Christ, is really quite different. It means suffering. Compassion literally means suffering together. And then he added, while they didn't all find the same words to say it, what I heard these couples tell me was this: we have held each other tenderly during our suffering. When times were hard, when one or both of us were hurting, when we needed someone to lean on or hold us in our pain, we held each other. That's our secret. Someday you will be old like me, the rabbi said, and I won't be here to ask you then, but if I were, I'd pose these two questions for you to consider. What have you learned, and how well have you loved? He finished by saying, so what have I learned in my long life? What can I offer to one so young as you? Share your passion, show mercy, accept suffering, practice compassion. Hold each other tenderly and with love, always. Graduates of the class of 2019, I'll finish with this. Today you are surrounded by many of the very people, your parents, family, teachers, and friends who have helped you discover your gifts, develop your passions, and nurture your dreams, and have supported you all along the way, in good times and in hard times. Know that as you walk out of this theater and continue your journey into the world beyond, you take our love with you, always. Thank you very much.